So for those of you who are just now joining, we are actually going to go over the essentials again. So if you were here at the start of Kenna's class, totally feel free to, just take this little extra time for a quick break. Or if you want to hear about who we are again, which, I don't blame you, stay. So yeah, the essentials what is the essentials, Danielle? The essentials is a free online classes about navigating the photojournalism industry. They are free, gratis. We talk all about different topics. As you've seen, pitching. We're going to get into a lot more topics throughout the rest of the day and tomorrow. And they are made in partnership with these amazing grassroots photo organizations working toward inclusivity, equity, and access in the media, all of the good things. And that would be the Everyday Projects, Black Women Photographers, and Photo Wings. The Everyday Projects is a global community of visual storytellers, all committed to using imagery to combat harmful misperceptions and to rise above persistent inequality, which unfortunately the visual media industry is sometimes often guilty of. So that's what the Everyday Projects works towards. And as a nonprofit, we work to provide opportunities for our global community and to provide structure, support, and direction for the diverse and worldwide range of everyday photography groups.
And Black Women Photographers is a global community organization that I started in July of 2020 to provide Black women and non-binary identifying photographers, opportunities to get hired, free resources such as portfolio reviews, grants, and things like this. So thank you all. Yes. And as Danielle mentioned, Photo Wings is our incredible sponsor because what we at Black Women Photographers and also at the Everyday Projects always try to do is make sure our opportunities and our resources are free. And in order to make them free, we have to have incredible sponsors. So thank you so much again, Photo Wings, for providing funds for us to be able to do this and make it free for you all to attend, that there is no more barriers. Because as we all know, this industry is expensive. There's already a lot of barriers within this industry. So being able to provide free things like this is what we try to do as much as possible. So thank you, Photo Wings.
Should probably unmute myself. Again, my name is Danielle Villasana. I'm the co-host of The Essentials here with my co-host, Polly Irungu, and I'm just like, woo, firing at all cylinders. I'm also an independent photojournalist, a community team member of the Everyday Projects. And like I said, I love community development and education. You can see some of my colleagues here. We've got Rebecca Gibeon behind the scenes helping us with tech, and Austin Merrill in the audience, who is a co-founder of the Everyday Projects along with Peter DeCampo. So hello to everyone. And of course, we have Annie with us too, who we will give a very proper and full introduction of in just a moment. And I know I keep talking about how amazing Polly is and how we're sharing this stage together. And I'm a big fangirl of Polly and Black Women Photographers. But for those of you who didn't catch it the first time, I just want to emphasize again the amazing work she's doing, elevating the voices of Black creatives. So please, if possible, consider making a donation to BWP, big or small. It all counts to support their initiatives and operations. And you can see how to do that on the slide. So take notes. And I think, go ahead, Polly, yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. And then for those who also missed it the first time, we have so many incredible instructors who are the best of the best in their respective area, joining us, making space for us over the weekend to give, their knowledge and expertise to you all. So if you haven't already checked the full schedule, please do so. It's a jam-packed day today and tomorrow. It's our first time doing it as, a weekend summit. In the past seasons, we did once every week, but let's try something new. And so this is going to be good. We already had an amazing first speaker, Hannah, who was incredible. If you missed her session, don't worry, it was recorded, and you can check it out on our respective sites later this week when we upload the videos. And don't forget, to follow us, to spread the word, the information that you learned here. Feel free to post it online as well.
Yes, and just for one more quick housekeeping thing, we just shared the meet and greet link for later today, but I'm going to go ahead and do that in the chat here. That's going to start at 2:15 p.m. EST. So yeah, copy and paste that. And without further ado, I am so excited to be here with Annie. I met Annie Flanagan back in 2013, and I have just been obsessed and following their work ever since then. They're so prolific. They're here to talk to us about assignment work, which I'm like, how does Annie have the time for all of these assignments? Just beautifully, consistently, intimately documenting work, even when it's on assignment, and also amazing, beautiful personal project work that I would check out. But I, for one, I'm really excited to just learn more about how you make this magic happen, Annie. And I just, once again, love this light, like the disco ball, because that is how I see you, just a source of light and magic. And yeah, I'm super excited to just soak it all in. So I'm gonna stop my screen share so you can take it away. But before you do, I would also like to just quickly give the formal bio. They are a photographer based in New Orleans, Louisiana. Their photographs are rooted in the documentary tradition, frequently exploring themes of gender, memory, and people's relationship to place. Their select clients include the New York Times, National Geographic, No Big Deal, The Guardian, ESPN, and the Players Tribune, no big deal again. Annie holds a Master of Science from Syracuse University, Newhouse School of Public Communications. And Annie is going to talk to us all today about assignment work. And again, super excited for that because I've just, so amazed by you. So
thank you. Okay. So I will also, hi, I'm Annie. Thanks for having me. Today was going to walk through, like, email comes in to you, file the images, like start to finish my assignment process. I do want to say I just finished 16 weeks of chemo. So chemo brain is a thing and my memory is like not the sharpest. So just have patience with me if I'm a little, recall's a little slow. But I will, also just like for context, I live in New Orleans and I work primarily in the Gulf South, and also like in the United States. So that is like kind of the context for like the situations I'm working in for people that are like in different countries or in different parts of the world, I guess, based on the introduction. So some of this I think applies to everyone, but just so you have that. Let me start with sharing my screen. All right, here we go. Okay. So you got an assignment now, what? Here we go. So the editor's email comes in, usually. Okay, also I'm gonna back up just to like kind of piggyback off of what Hannah was saying. When I first started out, I emailed editors and I kind of like pitched myself almost, and I would just be like, hi, my name is Annie, like I live in, at that time I was like working in North Dakota. I live in North Dakota. I'm going to be here, like I'm going to be working on these projects. Like if you have anything in this area, like please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to work with you. So I just really went through and like found all the emails I could, and then emailed people just so that they knew where you were. Especially, I primarily, like, I've never worked out of like a major city. So I usually work, I mean, New Orleans is big, but they don't have like a bureau here. It's like not, like there are no writers here. So I kind of, that, just like that helps. Okay, also I'm gonna put my timer on because I too can rant. Okay, actually.
You're fine, Annie. Please rant.
Okay. I was like, want to keep track. But so the email comes in, and usually when the email comes in, it can be pretty vague. It can be like, hey, we have an assignment on Friday, like, are you available? I think it's very important to be informed about what you're saying yes to. So I ask questions like, I'd love to make this work, but like, I'm curious about the assignment. Where's the assignment and what's the deadline? Because say, they have an assignment Friday and you have a shoot Monday, like, you need to know like logistically, and also like you need to know that it's like what the story is, because sometimes you don't want to work on stories that they might not align with you. So that's like the first set of questions I ask. And then when I get that information in, I ask, sorry, the thing is blocking my screen. I ask these questions like, is this an assignment you want to take? Does this align with you? Does it align with your values? Do you have time? Do they pay enough? Are there risks? Like particularly for natural disasters, what are the risks and are you rested? I've turned down covering a hurricane because had been working for 3 weeks straight on the road. And I was just like, I cannot safely fly and then cover a hurricane for a week right now. Like I would be a liability. And I don't like, was afraid I would never get hired again, but it just like was not, I was so exhausted. It was like very, very, it would have been very unsafe. So like there's situations where sometimes it's okay to say no. It's a big thing I touch on. And then also like, is this a story outside your identity that could benefit for another photographer? So just touching on that, like for me, I know when I get to work on queer stories or stories about like trans identity, it like fulfills me in ways that other assignments don't. And it really is like very rare that you get to work on stories that like align with who you are. And for me, a lot of the work I have to do, and I think I think this is a shared feeling, is that we have to kind of like shut off parts of ourselves to work. Like you kind of have to compartmentalize who you are, and it's not in a bad way, but like when I get to work on stories where I can just like be my full self, I think it's really like I just cherish it, and I don't want to take that away from someone. So if there's a story where it really, I mean, there are a myriad of reasons to like why different people should shoot different stories, but that's a big one for me. If there's a story where I'm like, you know what, this is like, I'm not the person for this, and it would like really mean a lot to this person, or they have a whole body of work on this. I think a lot of it is for me, I'm trying to like just like not feed into the competition of this industry, because it's like, I don't know, soul crushing. So I want to like be compassionate towards other photographers and my friends. Okay, let me see. Okay, so there's a fork in the road. One fork, you pass on the assignment. I say as much or as little, depending how I know the photographer. Like sometimes I'm just like, I have a shoot, even if you don't. Like I'll just, or whatever. I'm just like, I am booked this day. But I always try and offer a local recommendation, especially if it's someone who like they're like maybe doesn't work that much, or like is trying to like be a leg up for someone. I think this is a good spot to be that. And I will say, like, I've never worked with this person, or I don't know them personally, but I really like their work. Like, have you seen this person's work? And then I also include what I'm interested in working on. So like right now I'm really interested on like grief. Like if you have any stories like about this, like I'd love to work with you, like depending on kind of what the editor is, like, just mention your interests and if you're traveling in the future. And then I also ask, like, are y'all taking pictures right now? And like, if so, are there any like topics that you're interested in or that you're focused on? Because different desks, like for the New York Times, they have a bunch of different desks. So you want to make sure, like, I like to learn like what that editor's interested in, or kind of like what is going through, like what the conversations they're having like internally, and like sometimes they'll share what they're interested in, or like kind of like areas they're focusing on. Okay, so then the other fork, you say yes. So I'd love to work on the assignment, kind of like, what are the next steps? Is there a draft of the story you can read? And is there anything you should know about? So sometimes like is in story like an ongoing investigation, like investigative piece, because that's like very different than like a portrait shoot, like they're kind of like different, I would say like levels of stories almost. So just try and like get information. And at this point, they'll probably like give you the contact information and like introduce you to who, or like pass along like the numbers of who you're going to be photographing or meeting with. Okay, let me make sure. Okay. So now you're scheduling your shoot, right? If the draft of the story is available, I read the draft first, because I try and it clues me into like visually like what I could be illustrating and the imagery I could make based off of the writing. So sometimes there are little clues and little things that you wouldn't know of if you didn't read the piece. And then you schedule the shoot and explain, like what will happen. I'm going to go down each of these steps, like in more depth, kind of explain what will happen. And then, you ask questions so you can understand like where you're going and like so it's like informing people, and you're going to like talk to them and schedule the shoot. And then you also want to be informed about like where you're going and like the safety around that. And then once you have all those conversations, then I follow up with an email and kind of like let the editor know about plan updates, questions, and challenges. Okay, so when you're scheduling the shoot, I think it's very important to speak directly to the people that you're photographing. Sometimes a reporter will talk to the people that you're photographing and they'll say like, is it okay if we send a photographer? And the person will say, yep, that's fine. How about Friday at noon? And, that's one type of conversation, right? And then like when I talk to the people, also because like reporters are really busy, editors are really busy, and this is kind of like you have more time to like have these conversations because this is like part of your job, I like to like very clearly explain what is happening. So I'll just say like, I'd like to spend, a day photographing with you. I would love to like kind of have a few hours or like an hour in the evening for some portraits in nice light. It's just going to be me and my camera, or it's just going to be like me and my assistant. Let them know what to expect, because like a lot, especially when you're working with kids or like young people, like a lot of people hear like the New York Times and they think like massive production crew, so you just want to like let them know that like it's just, I like to be like, it's just gonna be me. It's gonna be like it's not gonna be like a whole production, kind of just to like set them at ease a little bit. And also if they've ever done video, like the video experience is very, very different. And if they're model releases, if a publication requires releases, check with the editor first, but I like to send them in advance because I don't want someone to like sign, or I hate doing releases. I hate them because I hate when people have to last minute read a legal document and sign it. And I just think it's unfair. So I try and send them in advance so that they can like read it. And it's not like, and if they have issues or if they have questions, I'm like, mark that up, like cross it out, sign it, and I'll bring it to the editor. Like you like that, like don't sign something you don't want to sign. And it is also like, a lot of this is working in areas that have been like misrepresented, that there's been a lot of exploitation, that have like a very contentious relationship with the media. A lot of people like parachuting in and out, a lot of places where like local newspapers have been gutted and there isn't many small town newspapers. So a lot of it, is like people flying in from wherever and then leaving. So I just really try and like have conversations that are like shifting like, I don't know, there's always gonna be a power dynamic, but that like try and like minimize it. And then I always ask like, how does this feel to you? Like, do you have any questions? And if you have any questions, like feel free to reach out, shoot me a text. Okay. So it's okay to hear no. I like kind of going off what I will say before, like when someone tells me no, I know that I'm effectively communicating, and I don't look at it as rejection. I'm like, this means that like I'm giving them the space to say no, and they know that they can. And it's not going to make you like, if someone says no, I go to the editor, I'm like, hey, I called them, they decided that they didn't want to be photographed, you know, like what should we do? And we'll brainstorm. But like, it's not a reflection of you if someone does not want to be photographed. You know, and there are different types of no's. There's someone like avoiding your calls, or someone not responding to your texts, you know. And in those cases, I just like to say, you know, I'm sensing some hesitation. Like, do you have any questions? Or is like, do you want to be a part of this? You know, and it can be anything from like, you know, they're going through a breakup, or my house is a mess, or like I'm doxxed and someone can't know where I live. Like, it's like a myriad of reasons of why people say no. And I'll back up a little bit. A lot of times this conversation, it's like rare that someone says no. Usually by the time you're about to photograph with someone, like they've already have been like interviewed and they're expecting it. So it's like it doesn't happen often. It happens sometimes when people like show up to this town and like photograph for a story, and you have to like meet strangers, or sometimes when someone's been interviewed, but like they're kind of on the fence, or it's like a last minute. But it's not like a common kind of conversation. Usually stuff's pretty set in stone by the time it gets to the photographer. So let me see, I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, and I think just, you know, like, well, I guess young people, sometimes when I photograph with them, they'll say like, do I have to? And I'm just like, no. Like, I want to photograph with you, but like only if you want to be photographed. And I think, you know, having these are like very important conversations that can feel overwhelming when you're trying to like impress and like do well, but it is like, I think really kind of makes people like trust you more, and also like just makes them know that they're like, this is not happening to them, like they are part of this, like we are having these conversations together. So that's that. And then so now this part is like about keeping you safe. So that for the follow-up questions, when you're like talking to someone on the phone, you know, I like to research, you know, where I'm going. I like to research like if they've been photographed before, and it kind of goes into what I was talking about earlier, like how have they been photographed, like what were the images like. And sometimes if I notice that someone's been photographed, I'll ask them about that. I'll be like, so how does it feel to be photographed, you know, like kind of just like having these conversations with them. But also it gives you a sense of safety for you. Like sometimes I'll show up and no one has met a person I'm photographing, and there'll be no cell service, and they have like a ton of guns, and I'm just like, okay, like I'm not like inherently in danger, but like these are things that like you don't know going into a situation. And so now I ask, I'm like, is there cell service? Because I've shown up and just assumed that there's going to be service, and there isn't. And then it's kind of like, like not the best if you don't feel safe and there's no service all the time. And just so you can be prepared too. So I like to say like, I have a midday check-in with my editor, and I just want to be able to plan accordingly. So there's that. And so then after I've had this conversation with the people I'm photographing, if they're like 5 people, if there's 3, if there's, you know, however long that'll take, I'll probably be like loosely like texting or like in communication with the editor. But then after I've like wrapped all those up, I update the editor. So I'll like say, you know, like I talked with everyone. This is, you know, like we're set to do this. And then based on like the conversations you have with people, you'll have a better idea of approach. So, you know, they're going to be like doing this on Friday, I'm going to photograph with them, and then we'll have these images, and then like some time for portraits, and you'll develop like, I don't usually like sometimes I'll like run over like a shot list with the editor, but I always have it for myself. And then I ask, you know, like design needs, like should the images be, is it for a cover? Does it need to be vertical, horizontal? Like just like the basic things, will there be type? And just so you can like and most vertical and horizontal needs are like usually pretty common, but like design needs aren't, but sometimes they are, just so you can like, they're like, yeah, we could use like a lot of dead space for this thing, or, you know, just so you can like kind of be aware. And then map and book trip. Assignments are really expensive. I regularly drop $1,000 to $3,000 on an assignment. You know, you have your flight, you have your hotel, you have your rental car, you know, I spent my first assignment saving up money so that I would have money to do assignments. So I have like a nest egg that is for expenses, which is insane. Like, it's insane. It's, you know, it's like really hard, but that's just like the nature of them, I guess. I don't know. It took a while for me to do that. And then, you know, clarify the budget. You know, some people are like day rate and travel fees, and some people like have a final file fee, or they have a, you know, like they have like a gear rental, which you can like rent out your own gear, so you're getting compensated for it. Which I can go, that you know, like some of these things are a little harder to touch on right now, but yeah, just like, I also have, you know, I have like my like I call it Ask a Man. And I have my photographer friends, and I'm like, what do you get paid for this? Like, what are your budgets? And a lot of times it is a lot more than me. So I have you know, I have people I trust that I'm like, what would you include on your budget? And I remember learning that people included like so much stuff. And I was like, no one's telling me this. Like no editor is going to be like, oh, you're missing these. I mean, some are if they like have your interest, but a lot of them aren't going to tell you what you aren't charging. So having people that like you can ask that are paid more than you, and then, you know, you adjust your prices accordingly. And then, you know, charge batteries, buy film, empty cards, make sure your hard drives have enough space, and get your rest. Rest is very important. I'll say, I don't know if I touch on this on the next one. Oh yeah, I also like go to I have a cooler for local assignments, and I go to a grocery store, and I like buy healthy food and expense it, because I'm on the road a lot, and a lot of times you don't have time to eat, and then the only places that are open is like fast food. And for me, it just, I mean, my doctors won't let me eat fast food now because it's carcinogenic, but also it just adds up, and it kind of like, it's easier for me to like go get coffee and know that I can like have coffee in my hotel room or like wherever I'm staying, and not have to like go find it. Like sometimes it's just about like making the trip easy, and like errands while you're working suck. So I just like get a cooler, and I at least try and have like breakfast, coffee, and then like snacks, so that you can just like, you know, because you got to keep yourself good too. It's not, yeah. Okay, so contracts. The big thing with contracts is you want to make sure that what the editor is telling you matches up with what the contract says. Because that editor could be telling you one thing, and then the contract will come in and it will tell you something else. And if that is the case, like it doesn't matter what the editor is telling you. So if there's like a disconnect, I'll just be like, this is what it, because sometimes it's the legal people, like it won't be the editor, and sometimes it's the editor. I'll just say like, the contract doesn't really line up with what we discussed. So is there any way to have it like reflect our agreement? And then, you know, you'll go from there, and that will start negotiations. So there's like usage, like how are the images going to be used? For example, the New York Times can do whatever they want with your photographs. I've opened Hulu, and my photograph was there, and I was like, that's interesting. Did not get any more money for it, you know, and their contract's pretty set in stone. And then there are other publications where like you can kind of like negotiate a little bit more and like mark it up. But I think the Washington Post is also pretty, because they license everything through Getty. And I tried to negotiate that, and they're like, unless you're repped by a stock agency, like we can't adjust it. So some things, you know, you just, can't do anything about, and some things you can. But just like understanding, like work for hire means they own your copyright, and that you want to maintain copyright. And then, yeah, like what the deadline, what the turnaround is, kind of like how soon they'll need the images. And this is, every publication's different, but I always like to like have those conversations before the deadline conversations, like before contracts. And then sometimes, I at least have like the contracts in conversation before I go out in a shoot, but I don't ever like not go because I don't know if this is bad business practice, but I don't ever not go because I haven't like agreed on the contract. Because usually it's like in the works. But I would not necessarily follow that advice. I don't know. I would maybe play it by ear. I like that could. I also do. I'm like, if they decide to cancel this assignment, like you want to talk about like kill fees. And I guess like if a contract is in the works and maybe you don't feel totally like secure in it, just being like, okay, well, if this contract doesn't work out, like there are kill fees for like if your shoot was canceled, and kind of like having those conversations. But that's like worst case. Like this is like worst case scenario, in which case I would also probably seek the advice of another photographer, because sometimes it's hard to know what to do in a vacuum. Okay, so now, once you arrive on assignment, I like to talk with my editor about how expectations change. Like, did you envision a portrait in front of like a pink wall and the wall is now green? Or like, are things not possible? Like, everything kind of looks different once you get to someplace. So having conversations about that. And do you have a better sense of imagery? Like, are you like, wow, I'm really excited about this. Like, this is going to look great. Like, we can do it here and here. And sometimes I'll just like I don't usually send images of the back of my camera because I'm paranoid that then I'll download the image and the image won't be in focus. But I do take pictures with my phone to be like, this is generally like what we're doing. But I don't, I'm superstitious. I don't want to jinx anything. Okay. And then, so now you're on assignment. You've gotten to where you need to be. I think it's really important to have a pre-shoot routine, and not me. You don't want to bring in your outside life into the shoot. You don't want to bring in the like pressure, like this is what you're here to do and this is what you love to do. Like, I don't want to bring in like any drama that's going on from like the story, or any pressure I feel from the story, like from a publication standpoint. I don't want to bring in just like I just want to like clear my mind so you can be like fully present when you're photographing. So, I like to get to places early, and I love driving because it really helps me clear my mind and kind of just like not look at your phone, just like do what you got to do and like listen to some music that I like, and just like a simple routine, but just like really. And sometimes like photographing landscapes, like I know like if I have a shoot at like 9, it's really nice for me to like get up at 6 or 6:30 or 7 and then photograph like the morning routine, just to kind of like get in that practice before you begin your day. And it like feels very relaxing. And then when you get there, it's like, again, like you don't want to rush. Like kind of what Hannah was saying, like I introduce myself, I say like, I'd like to start photographing. Is that okay? And depending on the shoot and the sensitivity of the piece, if I'm photographing outside someone's house, I will ask them if I can photograph inside their house. Like, I don't think just because someone gave me permission to photograph them in one aspect of their life, they gave me permission to photograph their whole life. Unless that's the conversation you had and you're like, hey, I want to follow you for the whole day. And in that case, I kind of work backwards, where I'll be like, hey, I just want to like shadow you for the whole day. But if there's any like a time that you don't want me to photograph, just tell me and I'll put my camera down. So really like letting them know that they have the power to ask you to stop photographing. I also like to let them know that it's off record, because like a lot of people, it's stressful being photographed and it's stressful being interviewed. And if you're photographing someone and then they're also like anxious about everything they're saying being in an article, like that's just a lot of stress. I would hate that, you know? So I kind of just am like, I say like, you know, this is all off record, because they'll usually make a joke. They'll be like, off the record. And I'm like, no, this is all off record. But if there is something that you bring up that I think is relevant to the story, I'll check in with you and ask if I can mention it to the editor or to the reporter. And sometimes they'll be like, can you not do that? And then you respect that. You know, I think like we have a very different relationship with the people we're photographing. And a lot of times we're the one they see the most and we live there. So usually like I'm working with a reporter who doesn't live in New Orleans or who doesn't live where I've been photographing. And like, you know, you're the person that they see, and we also have like the least amount of power. Like I'm the freelancer, right? So like I don't have any, and that kind of, you know, if they ask questions about like deadline, or if they ask any logistical questions, I'm like, I'll introduce you to the editor, or that's a question for the reporter. Like I do not answer anything because like I don't know, and I don't want to like misstep, and it's just, you know, I don't have the answers usually. Okay. And then also this goes back to, you know, kind of like being smart about bad decisions. I think like photographers are always like, or often like, I want to go down that road. I want to go down that road. And everyone's like, don't go down that road. That's a really dangerous road. And you're like, nope, still going to go down the road. So I like to say, be smart about the bad decisions. Always have your location shared with at least 3 people. Ask your editor, like they'll do it for, hurricane coverage and stuff. Like they'll sometimes, and this again like changes really like where you're based, but you know, I have code words with friends, I have code words with editors sometimes, you know, just like simple things like red, green, or blue, you know, just kind of things that like you know that if you text someone in a weird way, they're going to know like, okay. I have make sure I also like will let another photographer know where I'm going if I'm feeling a little uneasy about it, because they know the editors I'm working with. So I'll be like, I'm on assignment for this person and I'm doing this thing and I just want to also let you know, like if I don't, like I want to check in with you at night. And I have friends that do that. They're like, okay, if you don't hear from me by night, like I'm going down this thing, like I'll check in. I'm like, okay. And then, you know, where I live, I assume everyone has a gun, and I like, not like overtly, I like casually just kind of check, you know, is there a gun safe? Is there a shotgun by the door? Is there a gun in the console? Like, just like, it's just about being like prepared and like knowing your surroundings. And if someone's driving me somewhere, I like just keep track of where I'm going. You know, I'm like, I look for landmarks, I look for mile markers, you know, just kind of, you just always want to like, you know, just be aware. I think the phones can make us like not as aware and not as good at like maps and stuff. So I just always try and like, you know, have that. And then, okay, and so now you're all done. You made all the images. Again, the photographing is like the funnest part and like a very small part. But so I back up like, and I'm a big proponent of like, if I'm traveling a lot for work, when I'm home, I want to be home. I want to be like hanging out with my friends. I want to be hanging out with my girlfriend. I want to be like reading a book on the couch. I don't want to come home and have like so much housekeeping to do, I guess. So I try and like, I back up in the hotel room. I try and like invoice on the plane. I have one Word document that has all of my captions for the year. So I'll have 2022 like Word document, and I like all of the, otherwise I have like a gazillion, I mean, I still have a gazillion notebooks, but I like input all of the caption information into the Word document. And if you're filing images, so some publications have a final file fee. So they'll pay you $75 to $125, give or take, per image, which is rare, but very nice. And so in that case, you'll usually send them a wide edit, and then they'll come back at you with selects. And if they don't have the final file fee, I like to ask the editor, I'm like, hey, can I just send you a wide edit? Because for 2 reasons. If I send an editor if I'm tired and I've been working nonstop, I'm not like in the best editing mind, right? So I like to send an editor a wide edit. And then they come back and they're like, we want these like 20 images or whatever. And then that way you also only have to process 20 images and you don't have to process 60 to 80 images. And that's good for time. And also that way the said publication does not have 60 images of yours in their stock that they can use for whatever they want. So a lot of it is kind of time and just like, you know, protecting, again, like those deliverables, that usage, like just like protecting your work. Thank yous, really, really, really important to thank people. Let them know that they can contact you. Like, I want to be reachable. I don't want to be like an elusive journalist who just like comes in and isn't reachable. I'm just like, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach me. And then once the story's published, how do you feel? Like it can be a lot to have stories published. So like really, and a lot of times I will have really long conversations with people after something's published, you know? And I think that that is really important. And for me, it takes a lot of time, but I'm like, it's like I don't know. It's a really, we, you know, we all know that like, we've been a very extractive industry. And I think it's really important to kind of combat that. I don't know if combat's the best word, counter that, but like, and really like, combat was not the best word, but you know, like, just like being available, I guess. And a lot of times, like I photograph now with people who know people that have been photographed with me. And it like the way that and the people that I've met on assignment, if I have another assignment that I'm thinking about, you know, we just like know each other. And I think, yeah, that's that. And sometimes I ask the editor for feedback, like depending, again, they're really busy. If it's a bigger story, I'll be like, hey, if you have any feedback for next time, like what could have gone smoother, and just kind of try and like debrief. And then I also let them know, you know, like what I'm working on. So after a story's wrapped, like loved working with you for the next like 3 months, I'm going to be working on this thing. Like if there's any way for us to work together, love for that to happen again. Yeah, and that's a picture. Have fun. I hope I didn't go too over. Yeah, I guess.
You were so good.
Oh, good.
Like I actually learned some new things as well. And I hope you can see the comments thanking you as well. Thank you all so much for just, you know, always like being on. Like we don't even have to ask these days. Like you guys always just drop great questions. So if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. But the one thing I want to mention, because you said it so like casually, it's like, you just did with chemo. Oh my goodness. Like, I hope you saw all the congratulations and healing vibes to you. Like, you just did chemo. You just beat chemo. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And congratulations to you. I just had to say that, like, wow, you're over here, like giving us a master class after beating chemo. Okay. I just had to get that out of the way before all the great questions. I'm just amazed. Just wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Ditto,
you. Yes,
ditto,
I'm
ditto,
very
ditto.
glad it's over.
Yeah, so amazing. So amazing, Annie. You're just like, yeah. Like, just, yeah, I have no words. So Polly, thank you for for like beautifully saying it. Because if I do, I might.
I don't know if that was eloquent, but I just wanted to say what I felt. But you know,
We love you, Annie.
But you know, along those, I want to kick it off with, you know, a question that, you know, I don't think we talk about enough. So you get an assignment, and let's say you do get sick, or some life happens. We can't expect things. Like, what do you do when you have to like stop mid assignment or whatever the case may be? Like, has that ever happened, or Miss recently, has that happened to you?
Yeah, I tested positive for COVID in the middle of assignment. So that, you know, there are things that I will just put up with. Like I've definitely like not like sick, but like I've been covering, and there had a story like on the less extreme side, and went to bed at the motel and like got a bunch of bed bug bites. And then I was like, okay, there are no more motels left. Like, what do I do? So I was like, put all of your gear in the car, because it was really hot. So everything they would, would kill the bugs. So I was like, okay, you're gonna put all your everything in the car. And I like lined the bed with trash bags. And I was like, you have 2 more days and there's no other option. Like, and so then, there's that where you're just kind of like, it's not really sick, but it's definitely like not ideal. Let's just say it's like, and then like with COVID, I tested positive, and the New York Times I had to go get like a actual, like not a rapid test. And they have like it was like right after they lifted the mask mandate for flying. But so I have conversations about COVID now, like pretty, like, I'm like, okay, if you test positive, and they have 5 days of pay for like your quarantine days. But as for being sick, I think I mean, I will say I got my cancer diagnosis the day after I got back from some of the images were in here from wrapping up this piece that I pitched and had been working on for Time Magazine and was like in deadline. And I just like let my editors know. I was like, hey, I'm going to be in doctors. I just got this diagnosis, but I've also been working on this story for a year and I really want to see it through. But I just think it's like, you don't want to be unreachable and people don't know why. So I like to just like kind of like let people know what's up. Cause I also think it's like, I don't know. I'm like, it's interesting because we don't have like bosses, right? We don't have like we don't have like an office where people know each other. We have like individual relationships with people that work places, and it's like just structured very differently. So I just try and have them be like personal. I don't know. I like try and just be like clear about what I'm going through within reason. Like I didn't tell my editor about the bed bugs. So I was like, I'm covering this like very hard time. I'm not going to be like, I just like kind of did it. And then, but there's some things where I do, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
That was good.
oh, sorry, Paula.
No, go ahead. I was just like, no,
We're
I really
just
like your point.
We are maybe the worst co-hosts together because you and I, we just get too excited. We like a tamer, like yeah, I love, Annie, how much you have been talking about empowerment. Like, I think so often as photographers, we feel afraid to ask questions. We feel afraid to say no. So it was really nice hearing you talk about like, it is okay to ask questions. It is okay to have conversations with editors. Like we are also people. And I also love how much you talked about ethics and how those question asking, not only to your editor, but with the people you're photographing is so much tied into ethics. And Charisse later today will be talking about that too. So yeah, just like, man, I've been furiously taking notes. I've learned a lot myself and I've been photographing for, 7 years now. So there was so much you talked about that even I, don't do. So thank you so much. We do have a list of like 10 questions and we've got about like 25 minutes. So I'm hoping we can get through most of them. But let's start with,
I'll stop sharing so I can.
oh yeah, sure.
Okay, well now I can, yeah.
Seriously, I'm obsessed with that disco ball light. It's just like the coolest thing ever because you're just, I don't know, mad. Oh, I'm such a fangirl. Okay. So when it comes to contracts for assignments, do you send them your own or does the publication have a standard contract that you come to agree with? Are there specific things that you make sure are in there, like copyright, for example? And then another question, I'm trying to like kind of couch a lot of questions, one that are related. What happens if, for example, it's a rush assignment and like they want you to go that day or the next day and there's no time to kind of talk about contracts or rates? Like, how do you navigate that? Do you want me to? Yeah, okay.
So the first one, like they send you the contract. There's like an interesting clause where they're like, we can use your work in the future for any reason not ever known yet or ever to be known, like some vague. And I just always am like, like, what, you want to blast my photo on the moon, that's going to charge you a lot more money. Like, I don't like, you could, and a lot of, okay, I'll also say like a lot of, so it's like Condé Nast, like I've signed a Condé Nast is they have two contracts. They have a not work for hire contract and a work for hire contract. So they're the people I was talking about specifically, where you're like, can I have and they'll send you the work for hire one first. So I'll say, and I learned this because I asked my friend who worked for them. I was like, did you do the work for hire? And she was like, no, ask them for the not work for hire. And I was like, okay. And then so you'll sign that. And then anytime you work for like any of the magazines that they own, you don't have to sign a contract because you've already kind of done it. And they're a little harder to mark up. I guess it just like kind of like, that is one thing, like I really just like commercial language in journalism context is kind of something I look out for, because I've had images like it all kind of, I like had my limit where I like was Googling, I was trying to find an image that I made, and I found an image I made of a man dying in hospice in Angola prison, used, because it was just his arm, it was like a detail shot, used to illustrate right to life, right to death, like an article about like people's right to choose how they want to die. And I was just like, this man had no choice. Like, are you kidding me? Like, why can you use, and it kind of hit me that I was like, oh, these images can also be used out of context without the consent of the person in the image. So it's like equally protecting your worth or whatever, but more importantly, like protecting the people in the photographs. Cause I'm like, so I look out for stuff like that, where like, and it's hard because it's legal stuff is really exhausting. And then, I'm kind of like a good faith person, I guess. I'll just like go on an assignment if things are still in the works. I think most people do. Like, usually like you're working, and if it feels a little suspect, I'll like ask again, like people that I know, like, have you worked for this reporter? Usually it's like not for a publication I've never heard of. So it's for someone where I like know the editor, or like someone I know has worked with them, or the publication, or there's an editor at the publication that and trust if something does happen that you can reach out to. So there's like, it's a small enough network where like if something, you kind of, there's like security in it a little bit. Because most assignments, also a lot of them are rushed and you haven't really like figured it out. But that's also when sorry, I'm ranting, but I'm like, it's so complicated. I guess I'll make clear that I want to own the copyright. Like, I will make clear what I'm agreeing to before the contract is sent over. So there's an email between me and the editor agreeing to like the most important terms, like that I'll maintain copyright, and that like if there's licensing or something, we can talk about that. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. And okay, so filing fee, like what? I did not know that this exists. What is it? I mean, you've explained what it is, but I think it also sort of piggybacks on lots of people sort of have questions about budgets. So for example, what are some of the fees you didn't know about that you charge now? I, for one, will definitely be asking about final filing fees. So thank you, Annie, for that. What do you include in your budgets? And then when it comes to licensing and exclusivity, how do you deal with that aspect of assignment work and sometimes how it comes up? So kind of questions around money, budget. Yeah.
So budgets. I like by now I've never had success getting any of those fees from the New York Times. Just, usually they're like day rate. Maybe there's like a research fee. If you are pitching a story or if you're doing a lot of research, I'll ask for research fee because it's a lot of work. But they're pretty like you know, expenses, sometimes gear rental, like if you're going on an assignment that's like really, really long, I'll ask for gear rental. If it's like a day shoot, I don't really, depending on the client, I don't really ask. Or like if it's like an hour-long portrait. But if I'm going to be on photographing something for like 3 weeks, I'm like, this is so much wear and tear on my camera. Like digital capture is one. I don't know if that's changed, but that is also just basically like payment for the use of your camera, which is usually like $200 to $300 a day, I think, or something. And then some people have like a post and captioning fee, which will be just like a flat rate. And usually if there's that, there's like not the final file fee. But these are all just like fancy names for basically getting compensation for the wear and tear on your gear and your time. Like it's not. So with budgets, and then, you know, like an assistant, I usually, especially now, immediately ask like, is there a budget for an assistant? For a few reasons. I prefer to work alone. If I'm driving a lot, I also want to like, it's hard right now. I want to be able to like hire people and like bring in money to other people if I can. So I think asking for an assistant and knowing if that budget is there and having them help, like sometimes I don't want to photograph with another person there, but I do, like it is really helpful for them to like find food or like carry my, or like make sure everything's charged or drive me around while I'm photographing landscapes, you know, like kind of figuring out how to work with someone in the capacity you want. But budgets, usually if it's like a larger story, it really depends. Like when I've worked with Time magazine, we go over the budget and I'll send an estimate before I photographing. Like we'll agree on all of that, and I'll lay out like, you know, a per diem instead of like I love it when someone's like, you get a per diem and I don't have to like keep track of all the receipts, because it's a pain in the butt to keep track of all the food, which is usually like $65, $75 a day. You know, an estimate of mileage. Yeah, so usually, and like with smaller assignments, I don't do a budget because it's just, but I do email, like if I'm flying somewhere, I check in and I'm just like, hey, flights are in this range, but like, oh, this is something I want to say. You are not a travel agent. It is not your job to like save the New York Times or whoever, like big publication, like $100 on a flight. Like I want to be home. I don't want to scour the internet for like the cheapest flight. So I fly Delta and I fly Southwest. And I look at the prices and I say, this is the range of the prices. Is that okay? And the editor says, yes or no. You know, like, hey, flights are actually like really, really expensive when we wanted to go. Do we need to move the shoot? Like, but I'm not like, hey, I found like the cheapest flight on this like obscure website. Like, no, I fly Delta and I fly Southwest because United and American have made me check my camera bags and I do not want to risk my equipment. So I fly companies that I know my gear is safe and that they won't be like, oh, we overbooked it, you have to check your gear now. And I'm just like, no, that's not happening. Same goes for hotels. Like I like Marriott. I like routine. I like to know what I'm getting. I book my hotel, but I let the editor know, kind of like if I'm not sending a budget, I'll like let them know like the general price range of stuff. But yeah, we aren't travel agents.
And you also mentioned a kill fee. Can you talk about how you deal with that?
Yeah,
What
so
it is and how much?
okay, usually that's like 200 to 300, I think. It doesn't happen often. But that's like someone, or if they'll say, like this happens a lot for storms, and I imagine maybe it happens for like protests, but I don't cover I haven't covered protests, so I don't know. But it's kind of like when people are like anticipating something happening, so they want to have you on retainer, but then you can't take other work. So when editors are like, okay, well, will you just like hold this day for us? I'm like, yeah, unless I get another assignment, I won't book a trip, but I'm not gonna like turn down work. And then if someone comes in and asks to hire you, I'm like, hey, I just got approached by another publication, like, do you still need me for this day? And so it's kind of, that's like a hold thing, which people try and do and not pay you. And I'm kind of like, I don't know why you think that works like this. But then a kill fee is like someone, like a shoot is canceled. So you've like turned down work or haven't, it does not matter. But like someone's like, okay, we want you Thursday and Friday of next week. And I don't usually address this ahead of time. I like when the shoot's canceled, I'm like, hey, like I had to reschedule a bunch of things. Like, do you offer a kill fee for cancellations? And or if I have something else, like if it's kind of like like again, like a hurricane, if there's something where like they want a lot of people like on deck, but they don't really know what's going to happen, I will ask if there's like a kill fee. Yeah, and that's just essentially like they hired you to photograph and the shoot was canceled. And so like it's like to compensate, your time and kind of like, but I try and like be like, I don't like shoots get canceled. And sometimes if it's like an hour-long portrait shoot, I'm not going to ask for a kill fee. But if I really did have to, like, cause I don't know, I guess I'm not the best business person, but I also like don't want to be like, I guess it's like a fear of being hard to work with maybe, which comes from a place of why do I have that fear? But like I have that fear. So I try not to like bombard people with like big cancellations, especially if it's editors I work with a lot. But if it's like something where I really did, and some editors will say in code, they'll be like, did you have to reschedule anything for this shoot? Do you need compensation? Some people will ask you and you'll be like, yes, I need a kill fee, which I think is how I learned about it. So does that help?
No, that does. You mentioned that a lot of the mainstream publications like the New York Times already have a set day rate. For example, I think if I recall, it was like 450 or 400 or something for the New York Times. I think as photographers, as journalists, we always hear the word like negotiate and like negotiate your rate. But how do you know when to, and how do you know that like what buttons to push? I know you mentioned like you always try to maintain the copyright, even though most of those contracts are work for hire. How do you go about negotiating, and when do you know where to draw the line?
Yeah, I guess with now I negotiate hazard rate, I would say is the most common thing, because if I'm flying into a place that has like soaring COVID rates, I'll be like, can I get like, hey, like things are really spiking and I'm supposed to be like in a hospital at this place. Like, can I, and kind of just like spell out the risk, like, would I be able to get hazard rate? So that's a pretty common like negotiation that places that have a set day rate can give. Licensing, I would say I negotiate, like I don't only work for publications, like sometimes I work for a foundation and sometimes you do portraits, like you really are working for like a bunch of different people. And this is like specifically about like photojournalism, but like I'm working with negotiating something right now with someone where I shot it. And then they were like, we don't want to use the images commercially, but like, since we aren't going to use them commercially, maybe you can sign the work for hire. And I was like, no, like, and that's again, like, you want to make like that editor could leave. And then a new person could come in and put your images all over billboards, like you don't really. So I think a lot of it is also just like, we don't only work for publications. We work for whoever approaches us or whoever we want to work for. And that is where I negotiate more, is like with foundations or with, people like kind of like journalism adjacent assignments where you're still doing documentary and the approach is still documentary or the approach is still portraiture, but it's not for a publication. It's for like a different outlet, I guess. And that it's like if they want lighting, there's a lighting fee, you know, like that is like, I again like have asked friends who work more commercially and they like send me what their budgets look like. And I'm like, okay, that's good. Also, I find that and I don't know, I think it's I like that website Ask a Rep. Do y'all use that? Like that one, because you can just type in a term and then like all Ask a Rep.
Ask a rep. Okay.
And it there's an Instagram and there's a website, and so that they like talk about negotiating from like a more like commercial standpoint, which I think I found that a lot of people kind of try and take advantage of documentary photographers because we aren't commercial, so they'll try and like get us to do documentary work but then like use the work in commercial ways. And a lot of times I'm like, you would not, like if I were a commercial photographer or whatever the designation is, like you'd be talking to my agent and this would be a very different budget and a very different like conversation, but you think you can get away with a little bit more because I'm not really like versed in that world. If that makes sense. So if anything is commercial, people come at you for anything commercial. I have like I have people that I talk with that like are familiar with that type of work and like or like reach out to like a rep or an agent, but that is like where negotiations come in more for me, I would say.
Awesome. Dang, learning so
Ranting.
much.
And
One of my favorite things you have said today, Annie, I think it was ask a man. I'm like, yeah, if we all learn one thing, ask a white man.
Yeah, just you know.
Sorry, not sorry. So we have like time for one more question before we got to wrap up. Unfortunately, we're just like soaking in everything, but I think this is something we always grapple with, that asking questions may make us look unprofessional. And so one specific question is, you know, if I disclose the gear rental need / rate, does that make me look unprofessional or not worthy enough of getting the assignment? And just asking questions in general, right? Does it make us look unprofessional?
I think there are ways to frame it that make you look professional. So a lot of it is like, do y'all have this in your budget? Because that, when you frame things in a way where other people have it in their budget, you aren't asking. Like I kind of, when I'm talking about budget, I'm talking about items that like have been covered before, you know, or that like I have been compensated for. But what was the question? Is that
The specific question,
what did they think would make them look unprofessional?
like mentioning the need for gear or rentals, but I think you sort of mentioned it, but yeah, something specific about that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, for a while I didn't have a 70 to 200 because I didn't want to drop $3,000 on a lens that I use like once a year, you know? So I would say like, okay, like, is there, can I rent this lens, you know? And then I wound up getting one, but like, there are some things where they're like, gear is expensive. I will say lens rentals, like has a buy program that I use. So if I'm on assignment for a month and I've gotten approval to rent a lens and it costs like $400 or $500 to rent it for the month, you can decide that you like a lens so much that you want to keep it. And then I'll buy that lens and it will have deducted the rental fee that the company paid for. So like the New York Times will pay like $500 for me to rent this for a lens. And then I'll buy that lens for like $1,000 when normally it would have been like 1,700 or something. So I really like, I mean, and they're based out of Memphis and Nashville. So they're also good. I can get like a lens in a day for if there's anyone like in the South. So yeah, I don't think it would, I think you just, you know, it's kind of just like confidence, asking questions with confidence and like kind of framing them in and, you know, not doing like outrageous things, like having it all be within reason, but like based in the reality that like some publications cover these items. But yeah.
And one more very quick, I think, less existential question, because there's so much. I also loved what you said about extractive industry. So yeah, lots to talk about. Charisse will go more into that in the ethics class next. But what's your method of storage for images? Do you keep RAWs? Do you only keep JPEGs?
Oh, keep RAWs, keep RAWs, keep RAWs. Oh my God. No, JPEGs, no. Ugh.
And
No,
why
no,
is that, Annie?
because JPEGs deteriorate over time. Oh, yes. I keep all of them, you know. I'm not a good person to ask this question to, though. I have like a million like lacy hard drives, and I have my like negatives and ammo tins because they're airproof. I'm a big fan of using military items for photo gear because they're very good about waterproof and storage, and people like really need to protect their guns. So a lot of times if you're going somewhere that's wet, like I use those things to store my film or your heart, you know, big fan of that. But yeah, I have naming convention, you know, year, month, date, dash, sequence number, and then I store them all like, yeah, in hard drives. I need to get like one of those big hard, like those like RAID drives, but I haven't done that yet. I probably should.
And sorry, what was it was askarep.com, or what's the actual URL?
I can look it up. It's Ask a Rep. I don't think it's Ask.
Inquiring minds must know / me too.
I think it's oh, is it not Ask a Rep?
Okay, how about, well, Polly and
I'll send it to you and I'll find it.
Somebody dropped it in the chat.
Oh,
they
is it there?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Ask Stern Rep. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
I do have one more question. Don't
okay, Polly, go. Annie, you're gonna be here with us all day. Sorry.
Oh, and you mentioned about how you photographed somebody who was dying and then you found that photo later like used for something else in the out of context. How do you leave the stories or the people you photograph, like, I don't want to say like at home, but like, how do you not take it home with you, but do you take it home with you? Like, how do you grapple with that at the end of the day? Like, you just did this and then maybe your next assignment may be something like, I don't know, like less hard, but like, how do you just manage that in your headspace, if that makes any sense?
No, it does. I go to therapy, which I find very helpful. But I think, a lot of it, one thing I really try and do is I write a lot, and I'll like try and write while I'm on assignment. And I really try and like write about what I learned. And then later I can be like, because I remember having experience like that. And then I can like go back and kind of like read about what I was thinking, like when I had a similar assignment, and it helps me be like, okay, you've been here before and like you handled it this way this time and it didn't like feel so good. So maybe let's like, I try and like reflect in a way that like I can learn from and like bring that into future assignments. Like I stopped working with that publication because I was like, I am not doing this. I'm just like, you cannot. I think it's interesting where like journalism has like very strong ethics, right? But when it comes to I'm like, you wouldn't pull a quote from a piece and be like, oh, that fits nice for this headline. Like that would never happen, but our images can be used because imagery is like interpretive in all these other ways, and oftentimes without consent. And I'm just with the photographer or those photographed. And I just like, if I'm pitching a story, I will say like these image, because you have more control over the work of your pitching. And I will just be like, these cannot be used out without accompanying this piece. And a lot of publications have that written in where they can like republish the images, but it has to be in connection with the piece that it was originally published with. So that's something that's like really important to me. but I think like just finding, I don't know, like for me, it's like kind of, and I'm getting better at it. And it was really hard for a while, but just like checking it at the door. Like I want to be in my garden when I'm in my garden. I want to be like on a date when I'm on a date. I don't want to, I've started just like leaving my phone. Like I don't need my phone. Like I don't know. I'm going to hang out with my friends. I'm with everyone I need to be with. I don't want to look at it. I don't care if an email comes in, but like really like just kind of doing things that that separate you, because it is. And I think also like a big thing is like with working from home, like my mom worked from home growing up, and it was like there's no separation. Like when you wake up, you're looking at your office, or you wake up and you're like work is next to you. So like for I try and have like a no phones in the bedroom rule, or just like really like putting up boundaries with yourself and like technology, I guess, is hard but helpful. It's not something I have to do like every night, but I try and like have it be that. And then I also rant a lot. Like I have friends and I'm like, I need to rant about this thing that's happening. And I'm just like, oh, you would not guess what I just went through. And then, you rant and it really helps. And then like, you get it all out of you. But I definitely try and like process it, because it's like we're in really, I mean, oftentimes I will say with grief, when I photograph with like, there's the story, I worked on this like multi-part series for the New York Times last year, and it's about adolescent mental health. And I was talking with one of the mothers whose child had died by suicide. And I was just like, how does it feel to talk about this? Because I like to ask, I'm kind of like curious. And she was just like, I don't know, my friends don't talk to me about it. Like you're one of the first people that I've really like talked with about this. And I think like that's so important, that we're kind of this like non-judgmental, like neutral area where like I said, like nothing's on the record, and we don't know their family, so we aren't going to like tell them how they should do anything. And we're just really like someone they can talk to in a way that I've found like, and that's not the first time I've had that conversation. Like a lot of times people don't know how to talk about like assault or trauma or grief, and like we are someone they can talk to about it. And I don't take that lightly. I think it's like a really important part of what we do. And like and it is hard. It's like hard to absorb, but I think it's also like, like I want to maintain my headspace when I'm not working, so that I'm able to like be present and not like too exhausted for moments like that. Because it's just, yeah, we're just like, it's a hard job, honestly. It's like not easy. So yeah, I don't know. That was a roundabout answer.
Yeah.
No, but you said it well. So thank you so much. And
Yeah.
sorry for going over, Danielle.
Oh no, I just like, yeah, Annie, you are one of the coolest people ever.
Yeah.
I'm your biggest fangirl. Seriously, I mean that. So thank you so much for sharing all of this knowledge, and not just like, oh, save your raws, but like going deep about what it means to be a storyteller, and making sure we're paid and all of that. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, for enlightening all of us. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this class, please do spread the word online, post on Twitter, IG stories, telling you how much you love them. Like, go ahead and do all of that. As Danielle mentioned, we have a few more sessions today, or maybe one more session today, and then a meet and greet, where we can just network with each other, because community is core to everything that we both our organizations do. And then we have more conversations tomorrow as well that will build off of what we've heard today. And as I mentioned in the past, all of these sessions build off of each other. So season 1, season 2, there's a lot of great information there that builds off of what we had already discussed here more in depth. I think Danielle dropped this in the chat, like tomorrow we're going to be talking about side hustles and promotions, and licensing, and how other ways to make money within the industry. But up next is Charisse May, someone who I love and respect so much. She's an incredible human, a storyteller, all the things, and she'll be talking to us about ethics because, again, we do not talk about this enough. Annie just shared some examples of ethics, some, very, very bad ethics by the other outlets, they work for. So I'm really excited about this conversation, and I hope you guys also stay tuned, stick around for that as well, and we'll get started shortly.
Yeah, so just before we go, we want to give another shout out. Thank you, bravo, high five, of course, to you, Annie and Hannah, but also Photo Wings, our partner in making the essentials happen. For those who might have joined a bit later, Photo Wings' mission is to highlight and help facilitate the power of photography to influence the world. And we are certainly talking about that today. We've seen that in Annie's work and Hannah's work. So thanks everyone for joining. As Polly mentioned, our next class is with Charisse May, and we will get started with that in about, if I can do my math right, in about 30 minutes. So it's gonna start at 1 p.m. New York time. So let's take a quick little break, and just one more time, I'm gonna drop the webinar link for tomorrow's classes. It's different from the one from today. Also keep an eye on your inbox. Polly, by the time we're done with this, we're gonna just have it all memorized, even the Zoom links. Zoom dot da 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 da. But anyways, thank you again, Annie. And y'all come back in about 25 minutes for 20 minutes. Get here early.
Don't be late, y'all, because we're gonna get started regardless.
And I think we can just mute and stop the video, Polly, but we'll just leave the webinar running, I think, for sake of the recording, which will be available where, everyone? On our websites in Spanish and French. Yes. Sweet. Okay, cool. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Annie. And bravo, congratulations again. Yeah, you're just, man, when I thought you couldn't be any cooler, you got through chemo. Congratulations again. You're such a badass. We love you.
Thank you.
All right, great time. Bye.